Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: Xi calls for stable U.S. relations as Taiwan election tests ties. Japan and South Korea iFootball prize as Asian Cup kicks off. Hong Kong stocks halt slump as mainland funds lift market from 14-month low. U.S. regulator SEC authorizes Bitcoin spot ETFs in cryptocurrency breakthrough. Cathay Pacific struggles to put its troubles behind it. Xi calls for stable U.S. relations as Taiwan election tests ties. Bloomberg. Chinese President Xi Jinping has stated that China is willing to work with the U.S. to promote stable, healthy, and sustainable bilateral relations. The comments come ahead of Taiwan's upcoming presidential election, which could have significant implications for the China-U.S. relationship. The leaders of both countries have recently engaged in diplomatic discussions, but the outcome of the Taiwan election could potentially put the progress made in jeopardy. Taiwan is caught between closer ties to China or the U.S., and President Biden has previously stated that the U.S. would defend Taiwan in the event of an attack. Japan and South Korea iFootball prize as Asian Cup kicks off. Nikkei Asia. The AFC Asian Cup 2023 begins in Qatar on Saturday, with 24 nations competing. Japan and South Korea are the favorites to win, with both teams looking strong going into the tournament. Japan, in particular, has been in excellent form recently, winning their last 9 games and scoring 39 goals in the process. South Korea, on the other hand, has improved under new coach Jurgen Klinsmann, winning their last 6 games and not conceding a goal. Both teams will be hoping to win the tournament and bring the trophy back to their respective countries. Hong Kong stocks halt slump as mainland funds lift market from 14-month low. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong stocks rose on Thursday, ending a 7-day slide, as mainland Chinese fund managers increased their purchases. The Hang Seng Index gained 1.4% to 16,320.00, while the Tech Index jumped 1.7%. The Shanghai Composite Index was little changed near its lowest level since May 2020. The rally was driven by bullish trades in U.S. and Asian equities, with sentiment improving. U.S. regulator SEC authorizes Bitcoin spot ETFs in cryptocurrency breakthrough. South China Morning Post. U.S. regulators have given their approval for the launch of exchange-traded funds, ETFs, that invest directly in Bitcoin. The move is being seen as a significant moment for the $1.7 trillion digital asset sector, as it will boost access to the largest cryptocurrency on Wall Street and beyond. The Securities and Exchange Commission has authorized funds for BlackRock, Invesco, Fidelity, and smaller competitors including Valkyrie. It follows a long period of opposition by the SEC, which dates back to 2013 when Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss first proposed a Bitcoin ETF. Cathay Pacific struggles to put its troubles behind it. Financial Times. Cathay Pacific is facing a range of challenges, including a shortage of pilots, low cabin crew morale, a lackluster share price, and passenger complaints over flight cancellations. The airline, which has been ranked the world's best 4 times by the Skytrax consultancy, is still rebuilding its workforce following 8,500 job cuts in 2020 and the closure of its Cathay Dragon brand. The pilot workforce is currently around 40% lower than pre-pandemic levels, while cabin crew numbers are approximately 50% lower. The airline is also facing competition from rival Singapore Airlines, which has brought back most of its pilots. KMT presidential hopefuls' middle path slowed by party's bid to stay relevant. South China Morning Post. The Beijing-friendly Kuomintang, KMT, party has struggled to portray Ho Yuih as Taiwan's next leader in the presidential election. Ho, the candidate representing the biggest opposition party, has spoken of his vision for Taiwan as walking a middle path and aims to bring peace and stability to cross-strait relations while being friends with the world. However, political analysts have said that Ho's middleweight vision has resulted in him being seen as lacking charisma. His campaign team has highlighted his local roots and his background in law enforcement. However, his record in this field has attracted controversy. Ho's lack of international exposure has also been criticized. The KMT has pinned its hopes on Ho winning the presidential election and keeping alive the democratic tradition of allowing no ruling party more than 2 four-year terms in government. Hong Kong players believe they can compete with anyone, ahead of Asian Cup. South China Morning Post. Despite losing 2-0 to Saudi Arabia in their final AFC Asian Cup warm-up match, Hong Kong coach Jorn Anderson believes his team has closed the gap on Asia's big guns. Anderson made 5 changes from last week's defeat by Tajikistan, but opted against risking those carrying knocks. He highlighted the improvement made by his team over the past month and said that his players feel like they can compete with anyone. Hong Kong's tournament begins on Sunday against United Arab Emirates. Instead of criticizing Hong Kong's system, Taiwan should keep its options open. South China Morning Post. Taiwan should not criticize Hong Kong's one country, two systems policy, but should instead wish the city well, according to Christine Low, Chief Development Strategist at the Institute for the Environment, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and a visiting scholar at Anderson School of Management, UCLA. Low argues that Taiwan should keep its options open with Beijing and reflect on Henry Kissinger's warning to the U.S. not to edge towards war over Taiwan. PBOC consults with economists about effective monetary policy. Bloomberg. China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, PBOC, recently met with prominent economists in the country to discuss ways of making monetary easing more effective. Real borrowing costs in China have risen and are expected to stay high due to deflation pressures, and credit demand remains weak despite efforts to ease monetary policy. The PBOC stated that the economists provided constructive opinions and suggestions on how to enhance policy coordination, guide market expectations, and prevent and resolve financial risks. The central bank has vowed to support the stable and high-quality development of the economy. PBOC provides strongest boost to yuan via fixing since November. Bloomberg. China's central bank has set its daily reference rate for the yuan at the widest gap to estimates since November, in an effort to push back against yuan weakness. The People's Bank of China, PBOC, set the fixing at 7.1087 per dollar, 609 pips stronger than the average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. The PBOC has been supporting the yuan through its daily fixings over the last 7 months, as the wide interest rate gap between the US and China favors the dollar, weighing on the local currency. UK and EDF on track to raise £20 billion for Sizewell C funding by end of year. Financial Times. The British government and French energy company EDF are expected to raise around £20 billion, $27.6 billion, from private investors to help finance the construction of a new nuclear power station on the Suffolk coast. Construction of the 3.2 GW Sizewell C plant, the second large-scale station in Britain's new nuclear program, is due to begin after the funds are raised. The plant will provide a stable power source as the country transitions to renewable energy. The government has already committed £1.2 billion to the project and has a 50% stake alongside EDF in the company delivering the plant. Standard Chartered banker bullish on outlook for yuan assets as stars align. South China Morning Post. Standard Chartered Bank predicts that anticipated U.S. interest rate cuts, Hong Kong's measures to attract family offices, and the upcoming investment migration scheme will attract investors to yuan-denominated assets this year. The bank believes that the Federal Reserve will start cutting rates in the second half of the year, diminishing the appeal of U.S. dollar assets and drawing funds back to Asia. Standard Chartered expects the rate cut to support the yuan, which is predicted to appreciate by about 2% to 7 yuan per dollar this year. China is fast losing its place as must-have in global portfolios. Bloomberg. Several major U.S. pension funds have reduced their exposure to Chinese stocks as a result of concerns about Beijing's long-term economic agenda, a prolonged property crisis, and strategic competition with the U.S. The California Public Employees Retirement System and New York State Common Retirement Fund, two of the country's largest pension investors, have cut their holdings for a third consecutive year. Many money managers are adopting a cautious approach to investing in China, and some funds have even exited completely. A survey of 100 pension and sovereign wealth managers by London-based think tank Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum found that none of them had a positive outlook on China or expected higher relative returns. China's share of the MSCI Emerging Markets Index has fallen to its lowest level since mainland stocks were added to the gauge in 2018, and its weight in the Asia-Pacific Index has dropped from 24% in 2020 to around 15%. Getting athletes to Paris Olympics is Hong Kong's focus, new institute boss says. South China Morning Post. The new head of the Hong Kong Sports Institute, HKSI, Tony Choi Yup Kwan, has set the goal of ensuring as many of the city's athletes as possible can qualify for this year's Olympic Games. Choi will oversee an expansion of facilities this year for table tennis, fencing, and karate, and the allocation of greater resources for sports medicine. The current target for Paris was simply to get there. Only after that, Choi said, would the focus turn to whether Hong Kong could aspire to anything in the region of its best Olympic haul of 6 medals, achieved in 2021. Home Office migrant report will create no fresh, safe and legal routes to reach UK. Financial Times. The UK government will release a report on available routes for migrants seeking to enter the UK, but will not propose any new safe and legal pathways. Campaigners have criticized the government for the lack of such routes for those seeking refuge from war and political oppression. The report will contain no additional routes, according to sources. Currently, there are no safe and legal routes to the UK for claiming asylum, and it is not possible to apply for asylum without being present in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 degrees. Today, we have a diverse range of news stories to discuss, from international relations to sports and finance. Let's dive in. First up, Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for stable relations with the U.S. ahead of Taiwan's upcoming presidential election. The outcome of the election could have significant implications for the China-U.S. relationship, as Taiwan is caught between closer ties to China or the U.S. President Biden has previously stated that the U.S. would defend Taiwan in the event of an attack, adding an interesting dynamic to the situation. In sports news, the AFC Asian Cup 2023 has kicked off in Qatar, with Japan and South Korea as the favorites to win the tournament. Both teams have been in excellent form recently, and they will be hoping to bring the trophy back to their respective countries. Meanwhile, Hong Kong stocks saw a rise as mainland Chinese fund managers increased their purchases, bringing some relief to the market. And in the world of cryptocurrency, U.S. regulators have authorized the launch of exchange-traded funds, ETFs, that invest directly in Bitcoin, a significant breakthrough for the digital asset sector. Turning to the aviation industry, Cathay Pacific is facing a range of challenges, including a shortage of pilots, low morale among cabin crew, and passenger complaints over flight cancellations. The airline is still rebuilding its workforce following job cuts in 2020, and it is facing competition from rival Singapore Airlines. On the political front, the Beijing-friendly Kuomintang, KMT, party in Taiwan is struggling to portray its candidate, Ho Yuih, as the next leader in the presidential election. Ho's middle-path vision has resulted in him being seen as lacking charisma, and the KMT is hoping for a win to keep alive the democratic tradition of allowing no ruling party more than 2 four-year terms in government. In football, despite a loss in their warm-up match, Hong Kong coach Jordan Anderson believes his team has closed the gap on Asia's big guns. The team will be competing in the AFC Asian Cup, and Anderson highlighted the improvement made by his players over the past month. Meanwhile, there is an interesting perspective on the relationship between Taiwan and Hong Kong. Christine Low argues that Taiwan should not criticize Hong Kong's one country, two systems policy but should instead keep its options open with Beijing. Moving on to finance, the People's Bank of China, PBOC, recently consulted with economists to discuss ways of making monetary easing more effective. China's central bank is looking for ways to enhance policy coordination, guide market expectations, and prevent and resolve financial risks. The PBOC has also set its daily reference rate for the yuan at the widest gap to estimates since November, in an effort to push back against yuan weakness. In the UK, the government and French energy company EDF are expected to raise around £20 billion to finance the construction of a new nuclear power station. The plant will provide a stable power source as the country transitions to renewable energy. Standard Chartered Bank predicts that anticipated U.S. interest rate cuts, Hong Kong's measures to attract family offices, and an upcoming investment migration scheme will attract investors to yuan-denominated assets this year. However, several major U.S. pension funds have reduced their exposure to Chinese stocks due to concerns about Beijing's economic agenda and strategic competition with the U.S. Lastly, the new head of the Hong Kong Sports Institute has set the goal of ensuring as many of the city's athletes as possible can qualify for the Paris Olympics. The focus is on getting athletes to the Games, and then the attention will turn to performance and medal aspirations. That wraps up today's news highlights. Now I turn to you, my dear viewers. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions or insights to share? I'm all ears. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.